Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and I am on the test server taking the Fragment Summit event for January 2022. OPARDIN CLANFATHER for a spin to go ahead and get you some content and an infographic on exactly how this guy feels, how hard he hits, and what I think about him in terms of grading him, and if I would change anything about him now that I'm able to test him for a while here on the test server. So we are going to do a deep dive into all of that. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so first of all, down below I will have a link to an infographic for this champion right there, where it shows the masteries that you'll see in this video. Now those are damage dealing masteries, where if you're not in the clan boss, it says down below. Always make sure you note on the bottom what the masteries are for. You're gonna want to build it differently based if you're using him as a support or a hybrid or a damage dealer or a clan boss, etc. Those masteries can change a lot, but then you get a general breakdown of everything up top, like the books costing 11, and then the grades for the different areas of the game, in my opinion. So first of all, let's go over the kit in general and the base stats. We'll see that he scales with HP, so the base HP is very important. Now 22,500 about it's all right. It's not amazing, but we'll get into all of the wrapping up my thoughts on him as an overall champion a little bit down the road. The attack is completely worthless. It doesn't mean anything. You don't need any attack on him. That is indicated, by the way, on the infographic up there, up in the top right. You can see it shows attack in red. That means you don't need any of it. And then the green is the main priority, and then the yellow are things that are good for him. So let's go ahead and get back to the stats here. Defense 1211. It's okay, pretty much expected. Speed of 102 is good. Crit rate, crit damage are all normal. And then the base resistance of 50 is very good. That's a very sturdy base resistance. The 0 accuracy is a little bit rough because he does need accuracy to get the Terminator manipulation stuff to go with the A1 here. So a little bit unfortunate that he doesn't have any accuracy. I'd maybe done like 40-20. Would have been nice for him. But anyway, it is 50 and 0. So really good resistance, but unfortunate on the accuracy. And then for the kit on the A1, we're going to get a multi-hitter, so good in the Fire Knight. Also reduces turn meter. You can book this up to a 65% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 5%, and a 65% chance of filling this champion's turn meter by 5% to help him get a little bit more snowball on the abilities there. And the multiplier of the A1 is going to be a 0.14 times 2 because it is a double hitter. So basically a 0.28. We'll get into how the multipliers grade at the end of the video when we compare it to other HP scaling champions, but just so you have that information, that is what it is. And then the A2 is going to be an AoE attack that also heals all allies by 10% of this champion's max HP. Heals all allies under continuous heal buffs by 15% of his max HP instead. So going to be really important to stack up his HP as high as you can get it, not only to affect his damage, but also get more value out of these heals. And it also means he's going to pair very well with defense scaling champions. You got somebody like a Syl, for example, in the Barbarians. They are going to be an amazing tandem in Faction Wars because the heal that he provides is going to be the same regardless because it scales with his HP. So if he's putting that healing onto champions with high defense where that healing is hard to remove, he's going to get a lot more value out of that healing. So we're thinking, note that he is going to synergize incredible with sturdy defense scaling champions like Syl the Drakes, while also getting 50% more value, 15% instead of 10% if you're able to pair him with other champions that are going to provide continuous heals. Then we've got the A3 here that is going to remove all block buffs and heal reduction debuffs from your whole team, and then place 2 15 continuous heal buffs on all allies for 2 turns. So he will place them himself to kind of synergize with the A2. And also you can book this up to 100% chance of removing 1 random debuff from all allies, which is super nice. You can book this to a 3-turn cooldown and an AoE cleanse while also targeting other stuff as well. So let's say you had somebody with a bunch of different debuffs. You've got like block buffs, defense break, attack down. You got a bunch of different debuffs on somebody. He'll remove the block buffs guaranteed, and also he'll remove a random debuff from all allies on top of that, one of the random ones besides the block buff. So getting cleanse from somebody is always good, and also lots of support here on a 3-turn cooldown. And then a pretty cool passive. I like this. Each time a continuous heal buff heals an ally, whether it's placed by him or not, it can be placed by Battle CORSAIR or whatever. We're gonna fill that ally's turn meter by 5% every time they get healed. So basically, when they take a turn with a continuous heal buff on them, and then the caveat here at the bottom, if there are multiple champions in the team with this skill, it will only activate one of them. It means you can't have 3 OPARDIN CLANFATHERs and 2 Bad Alcazars and just crank out these crazy passives. It's only going to work once with him, but it does work for every continuous heal. So stacking these up, getting tons of continuous heal buffs on your team, you're going to fill that turn meter. Basically, I can show you this in game when we dive into the footage, but if somebody with 1 continuous heal buff gets their turn, they will get that turn with a 5% start to their turn meter already to get to the next turn. If they have 2 continuous heal buffs, they'll get 10%. If they have 4 continuous heal buffs, they'll get 20%. So it does stack based on the continuous heals that you have on them. So the more the better in terms of getting a faster start towards getting that next turn sooner. And by the way, I forgot to give you the multiplier on the A2. It is a 0.27 times HP. So these multipliers sound super low, but HP scales super high. So that's why they sound a lot lower than like attack, because you'll have champions with like 100,000 HP, whereas a champion with a good attack score is like 4,000 or 5,000. So that's why the multipliers sound really low, but they're actually not that bad when they scale with HP. But we'll get into all the context of that a little bit later. Now let's go over to the OPARDIN CLANFATHER that I have built here on the test server, and we'll talk about what's going into the build process in terms of gear, masteries, booking, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so you can see here I have got him in a Savage and a Mortal, which is going to be good choices for him if you want him to do a lot of damage. Now he can do okay. I would say his damage output is pretty comparable to Sir Nicholas, so he's not going to be a Trunda or something like that where he's out there nuking like crazy, Canrafon. But for an HP champion, his damage output's pretty decent. It's just not going to be god tier. So I did try him out in that, and he was doing okay in terms of cranking out damage. Like I said, it was pretty comparable to Sir Nicholas, who's a pretty good damage dealer as a sturdy HP champion. The unfortunate thing is we need accuracy for one thing, and it's the turn meter manipulation on the A1, because you can see here each hit has a chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 5%. We need accuracy for that to land. So if you want to get utility out of his multi-hitter A1, you're going to want to get the accuracy high enough for the content that you are clearing. So in this case, that's why I went with the accuracy banner to get that up to around 280 or so to be able to get some use out of that in the dungeons and faction wars and stuff like that. If you're going to be using him in Doom Tower or Tag Team Arena or whatever, and you want value out of the A1, you'll have to get the accuracy even higher. So you want to synergize your amulet and your gloves. If you're going to be going for a support build, then you would probably go HP here and then also get HP % gloves. But if you're going to be going a damage build, you want crit damage on the amulet, and then either crit rate or crit damage on the gloves. The ring, again, we're going to be getting as much HP as we can, and then also hoping for some defense. Now, I wanted to see how hard I could get him to hit, so I wanted to get his HP super high with a Savage set, enough crit rate, and all those stuff, all of those things lining up. But speed boots would be perfectly fine on him for a support build or even a hybrid build as well. For the chest and the gloves, you're either going to want to get the crit rate or crit damage on the gloves if you're going damage. Otherwise, go HP %, and the chest is probably always going to be HP %. And then we're also trying to get the normal things like speed, accuracy, defense, sturdy stats on the bottom there. And then the top ones are super simple. We need HP, speed, accuracy, and defense mainly on some of the roles here for our pieces. Then for the booking process, when it comes to upgrading his skills, all of the books are pretty impactful. We're going to be needing cooldowns on the A2 and the A3, which is super important to get to that desired rotation of default 3-turn, which is super good. He's got both cooldowns are 3 turns, so you can get a nice rotation on him, and the A1 is also going to be helping him cycle through by getting these turn meter effects going. So all the books are pretty impactful. He takes 11 total. It's going to be 4 plus 4 is 8 plus 3 is 11. And he's all right. I mean, if you're going to use him, if you're still progressing your account, if you haven't finished faction wars, all that type of stuff, you don't have to feel bad about using books on him. He is somebody that has a pretty generally useful support / hybrid damage dealing kit. So even though he's not the best champion in the game, you wouldn't have to feel bad about spending books on him or anything. Then for the masteries, like we talked about when I showed you the infographic that you can find down below, this is going to be kind of standard masteries for him if you want him to do some damage for faction wars or certain content you're using him in, and you're not going to be using him in the clan boss. If you are going to be using him in the clan boss, you would go for the War Master mastery over there on the bottom left. Otherwise, you could go Savage, but there's also support builds you could build him with to either go down the defense and support trees and take resistance or accuracy or whatever on him as well. There's many different ways you can build him, because He does decent damage as an HP champion, but he can also just be built as a straight up support champion because of all of his heals and turn meter stuff that he does with cleansing debuffs and stuff like that. So many different ways you can go on this. You don't have to copy any certain set of masteries on this guy. You can go a lot of different ways. Now as we dive into showing him in action and talking about some of the stuff, I'll show you what he looks like in 12.6 Nightmare, trying to finish the Nightmare campaign here, where we would typically farm. If we're trying to farm XP in Nightmare, 12.6 is usually the go-to choice for farming XP there. And I think he can definitely farm the Nightmare campaign. Remember, he's going to have some self-sustain for healing. He's going to be very tough and sturdy because of scaling with HP. His abilities go on a nice rotation of the 1-3-3, so you can see he's really having no problems being a Nightmare campaign farmer. He's very endgame viable for farming XP, and I didn't even have speed boots on him or anything. This is just Savage and Immortal gear to scale up his HP and get him crit capped, and he is totally fine on 12.6 Nightmare. He blasts through it pretty easily, so definitely viable doing that. If you don't have a Nightmare campaign farmer yet, that could maybe be a role that he steps in and fills pretty decent for you. And now I want to show you how impactful his passive can be in terms of snowballing with this turn meter fill every time he takes a turn. So this is going to be a situation where I actually get 2 turns. So I'm going to go ahead and do the ability here on the A3 that places the continuous heal. And then I get another turn. I was fast enough to get another turn compared to the waves that I'm facing. And now if I zoom in on the turn meter right here, you can see that it is 10% full. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're right in the middle. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that turn meter is 10% full, and that comes from the 2 continuous heals that fill your ally's turn meter by 5%. That's where we're getting that 10%. 2 continuous heal buffs. 5 plus 5 is 10. So our turn meter, instead of being 0% full when we take our turn, it actually gets that bonus 10%. So we can get to our next turn a little bit sooner. But now let's place OPARDIN with a couple bad Alcazars, and I'll show you the difference when we start getting all of those continuous heals popping off on him as a champion and how it compares to the turn meter. Okay, so here we go. We get the continuous heals from Bad L. We get the continuous heals from Bad L. And now look at his turn meter and how much different that is when we have 4 continuous heal buffs versus 2. So you can see the turn meter is exactly twice as full. It's going to be 20% instead of 10% because we got the passive 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%. That turn meter is now 20% full instead of the 10% that it was with 2 continuous heal buffs. So you can see that there is a lot of value in stacking him with continuous heal champions because this is going to be for your whole team. It's not just him. It says each time heals an ally. So the whole team is going to be getting their turns and cycling through faster and faster based on how many continuous heal buffs are live on your team at a time. Okay, and now I want to pull this up and where I can draw on this and explain some of the masteries, or I mean some of the multipliers to you about OPARDIN, because I know the common question is, how hard does this guy hit? How much damage can I do with this guy if I build him in damage? So these are the multipliers over here on the right side for the A1 and the A2 that OPARDIN is going to have. Remember, the A1 is the double hitter that manipulates turn meter, a 0.14 times 2. So basically a 0.28, and we can see here for Sir Nicholas, the A1 is going to be a 0.25 times HP. So the A1 does a little bit more damage than Sir Nicholas when you consider the fact that when you add up both the hits and how much they do compared to Sir Nick's single target. Then they both have an AoE ability. Sir Nick is going to be a 0.25 on the multiplier of the AoE. And then over here under ability number 2, the AoE is a 0.27. So slightly better than Sir Nick, but worth noting that Sir Nick has barely more HP as a base as compared to OPARDIN. They are very close. They're within like 500 or so, I think. So they're basically dead even in terms of damage output that you could consider from them. And then both Sir Nicholas and OPARDIN have one turn where they're not doing damage at all, where they have an ability where they don't actually hit anybody. So they are about as close as you can get in terms of champions and their expected damage output because they scale with the same stat. They've got a pretty close, similar base stat on that stat, and then their multipliers are pretty close to each other. So you can expect this guy's output to be pretty equal to Sir Nick in terms of them doing damage on the field. And Sir Nicholas is a decent damage dealer for an HP champion. So OPARDIN, not going to be one of the best nukers in the game or anything, but he's a decent hybrid champion capable of some support while also squeezing out a little bit of damage as well. So alrighty, now let's go over the grading process here for the tier list and talk about some of my opinions on his ratings in the different areas of the game. So we've got the name, and he's Magic Affinity, and then Barbarian Faction, Legendary. Okay, so overall he comes out as a 7.3. All right, not amazing, not trash. As far as book value, I gave him a 7 because, I mean, he makes sense. He can help you progress your account, especially if you haven't finished Faction Wars or you need a little bit of help progressing in dungeons. It wouldn't be the worst booking decision you ever made. The clan boss. So you can't manipulate the clan boss's turn meter. He could throw off certain finely tuned compositions you're trying to build. So even though he's got some heals and he's decently tanky, he's probably not going to see a whole lot of play in the clan boss. The arena, again, he could maybe be all right in like sturdy, continuous heal clan boss, or I mean tag team arena compositions or something. But I don't think he's going to be like meta in the arena or anything. XP farm, he's fine because he can be a nightmare campaign farmer. He does it in like 30 something seconds, which is viable. It's not perfect. It's not a 10 or 11 or something, but he's fine as an XP farmer. He's just not going to be a blazing fast, brutal farmer or anything. He's awesome in Faction Wars. He's going to synergize with Scylla the Drakes, who's one of the best champions in almost every Barbarian's team. So perfectly viable there and going to be great in a lot of people's Faction Wars teams. Doom Tower, Dragon, Spider, Fire Knight, he's fine in kind of all of these dungeons, mostly being totally usable in most teams. Standing out in the Void Keep, obviously the Void boss is going to place poisons that cannot be resisted. So he's going to counteract those poisons by not only doing all the continuous heals, but helping your team cycle through their abilities even faster by getting their turns back even sooner. So he's one of the best champions in the game for the Void Keep. Nothing really to know on the other keeps, except for the Arcane Keep. He's pretty decent because he does place constant buffs on people, which helps out in that fight. Okay, so in conclusion, let's talk about my thoughts on Plarium's job in designing him as a champion, if I would change anything, and if my opinion has changed since my original perception of him when we were first teased his kit versus now that I've been able to build him and test him and play around with him and all that stuff. So originally I graded him as a C+ when I first saw what he had to offer. I'm going to bump that up a little bit to a B- now. I don't think he's going to be some meta god tier champion, but he's going to be all right. He's got a role in the game. He does something cool with the passive. I'm going to bump him up from a C+ to a B-. Would I change anything about him? I would probably give him like 30 or 40 more base defense and maybe a couple hundred base HP. I would bump up his base stats just a little bit, and I would probably let the A1, I mean, it's only, I would leave the decreasing the turn meter of the opponent maybe where it is. I would maybe let that be booked up to 75%, but I would let the other one filling his own turn meter, I would let that book up to 100. So I would maybe bump up the A1 just a little bit. Otherwise, I mean, he's pretty good. He's all right as a support champion, and he kind of fills the role he was meant to play. I like the passive. It's kind of cool. It brings something new to Raid, lets you build new teams and compositions that are really centered around getting value out of all of these continuous heals and snowballing. And yeah, you know, I'm going to bump it up a little bit, and all in all, wouldn't really change much. Maybe give him a little bit of love. But all in all, you know, if we're going to be doing 10 to 15 fusions a year, obviously not every single one can be the best champion in the game. I think if the events are realistic for the player base to take part in, I'm mostly fine with their job in terms of designing him as a champion and how he's structured in terms of his kit. But let me know what you think down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Are you going for the fusion and all that stuff? I really enjoy hearing your input when champions are this new, because it helps me try to formulate and make these opinions more accurate as we go down the line. So as always, thank you for watching. Good luck in the fragment event, and have a good rest of your day. Peace.